next to the mic.
I think they're going to have a call. He says that, he said,
Gotcha. Here, I got one.
you can do that too, whatever he wants.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, hi, Bill here.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, who's this?
Wonderful, all right. Was that a motion to adjourn, I heard? All
I
right,
can hear you fine, yeah. I must have had video technical difficulties. Sorry.
no problem, we're ready to go. It's like the voice of God in here right now, you know? All right, we'll call this meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let the record reflect that we have had 2 executive sessions since our last board meeting. We met on February 10th, 2022 for legal training and workshop with our solicitor, and also lawful privilege for other potential legal matters before the board. We also then met this evening, again for 2 primary reasons. 1, lawful privilege for pending litigation of George Uhas versus the Tunkhannock Area School District, docket 2022-19, and for personnel matters regarding specific employees. All right, with that, we're going to our new superintendent has a few words to offer and some updates to his recommendations for the ESSER that he wanted to provide before public comment so that people knew what they wanted to comment on for that matter.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Paul Doherty. I'm the new superintendent in your fine district, and I couldn't be more excited to fill that role. This past Tuesday was my first day on the job, and I've had a great first couple days, and I'm very excited and very humbled to be given this opportunity to lead our district. I've visited our schools this week. I've talked with staff. I've talked with students. Over the past few weeks, I've attended some sporting events, and last week I even went to parent conferences at all of our schools for the evening session of parent conferences, and I have to say I feel very welcomed by the community, and everybody I've met has been very, very kind. My goal as a superintendent is always going to be to offer dynamic learning experiences for our students while being fiscally responsible for the taxpayers. My first priorities, or one of my first priorities in this role, will be to examine current staffing levels current staffing at all levels. And especially as we start to plan for going into next school year. If there's retirements, I'll work with our principals and our building, or with our business department to determine if those positions need to be filled or can they be eliminated through attrition. Administrative responsibilities are going to be examined. I think there's ways to find assistance with some grant and curricular oversight by the redistribution of our current administrators' responsibilities. And you know, I could say, having run multiple departments simultaneously in a larger district, I certainly understand the importance of doing more with less. Now that I'm officially in this new position, I'm going to be recommending, or I'm recommending, some significant revisions to our ESSER 3 submission. As you may know, with ESSER 3, that districts are required to use 20% of the funds to address academics and learning loss. From what I've heard, talking to people and examining and doing a little homework, I know that last year's academic summer program was very well attended and successful. I'd like to maintain and perhaps even enhance that summer programming while that funding is available. I also believe that this one-time funding is an opportunity to make some significant capital improvements without passing cost along to taxpayers. For example, it would be great to be able to address or upgrade some of the HVAC systems or ventilation systems in some of our schools. John Shapolsky and I have been talking about some upgrades that, you know, he has some great ideas of things he'd like to implement. And ventilation upgrades are certainly allowable with ESSER funding. And with revisions to our grant submission, significant funding can be allocated towards these type of projects. And I'll give you a great example. I recommend revisions to eliminate things like, to eliminate the intermediate school SEL position, the home and school visitor position, the grant coordinator position, the high school outdoor learning space. Those 4 things I mentioned right there alone free up over $600,000 that can be addressed and go to other areas. Additionally, ESSER 3 does not carry the same, there's a rule typically with federal money and title money that means you have to supplement. You can't use it to supplant or pay for current things. That doesn't apply to ESSER 3. This will allow, ESSER 3 will allow us to cover the salaries and benefits of some current employees, thereby helping our bottom line. All the positions that are funded with ESSER 3 are people that are currently already here. I will not add additional personnel with ESSER 3 funding. These grants, you have to look and say, are they sustainable after the money is ending? And if it's not something then we should be implementing. Before ESSER 3 funds then expire at the end of 2024, if fund remains, I've been talking to Mr. Cormus, I'll recommend the purchase of additional student technology, additional student Chromebooks in an effort to maintain that high level of student access to technology. It's difficult to maintain a one-to-one program. We may also use any remaining funds to examine our textbooks and see if updated materials are needed. Another thing I'd like to report about ESSER, and I got this information on Tuesday from the IU, and I was able to confirm today with state officials during a webinar that there's no curricular or programmatic requirements tied to the ARP ESSER grant beyond what a district submits or revises in their application. So that's comforting to hear. That's my vision for the 4.1 million of ESSER 3 funding that we have access to. Unless otherwise directed by the board, I'll direct Mrs. Egan to submit our grant application, followed by arranging another session with the stakeholder group that she's worked with to discuss and implemented these revisions. And once approved by PDE, obviously with any major purchases or programmatic changes, with or without these funds, this would have to come before the board for approval anyway. So you would still have a significant amount of approval on anything that we're going to be doing with ESSER 3 funding. Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to address that, and certainly, again, thank you to everybody that's welcomed me to our fine district.
Well, clearly it goes without saying, welcome to Tunkhannock. So we will move into the public comments. I want to go over our procedure we'll be following tonight. I also want to add that if there were people planning to speak on item number 8 under new business, which was the contract with the Health Pro Pediatrics for speech services, we're going to be removing that from the agenda. It's not being tabled, it's just being outright removed. We determined that we can fulfill those needs in-house at this time.
Language students. Speech and language teachers could have up to 65 students or speech students is on their caseload. They were over that, and that's why that contract was being sought out. Right now, they are currently under it, although it's razor thin, but at this point, we do not need to put that in front of the board.
TASD is calling me. All right.
That's me.
And we, also to clarify, even if we had wanted to move forward with that contract, they don't have the service provider
That's
available
correct. They no
anymore
longer
either.
have the person to do it. But that
So-
was for, to make sure we were compliant with speech and language services that were in students' IEPs, but right now we're okay.
We're okay?
Yes.
All right. Everybody else's phone is calling from Tunkhannock School District too.
Yeah, that's me.
Spoiler alert, we're having a virtual day tomorrow.
Yes.
So that is why your phones are ringing. All right, we will have 2 public comment periods during tonight's meeting. Public comment on agenda items at the beginning of the meeting and public comment on non-agenda items at the end of the meeting. There's a 4-minute limit per person per public comment period. When it is your turn to speak, please come to the microphone, state your name, municipality, and which agenda items you're speaking about, if that applies. All speakers must be residents, taxpayers, students, or staff of the TASD. To object to board action under Title 65, Part 2, Chapter 7 of the Sunshine Act, please go to the mic, state your name, as well as the section and subsection of Chapter 7 you believe is being violated. The presiding officer and/or district solicitor will make a determination on the stated objection. That determination is final for the purposes tonight. Groups or individuals not residing within the district should email their comments to the school board president at holly.arnold@tasd.net in advance of any scheduled public meeting if they would like to register intent to speak at a board meeting. Please hold any comments, questions, or clarifications that arise during the board deliberation part of the meeting until the public comment period at the end of the meeting. And with that, the floor is open for public comment on agenda items. Mary, do you want to chime in?
Mr. Doherty, welcome.
Thank you.
Everything was great until she read that last part of the opening statement again. The current have a sunshine law violation, a policy violation. The policies do not state what you just said. And we have representation, just like any meeting. When we had the silica plant that was going to come in here, we had to have outside representation come in and speak because they spoke educatedly about silica. If there's representatives here to speak for us, they're allowed based on the policies that exist that you are supposed to be following as a presiding officer and as a board. If you need to recess and read that, then I would do that. Or you'd be walking into sunshine law violations because it's permitted under our 903 public participation. So that was my sunshine law violation, policy violation. I hope that did not start my time. And now I'd like to move into my comment. Do I have 4 minutes for my comments?
Sure, George. We'll do it this time.
I appreciate that, but that sunshine law violation should not have been part of a time. So it's not, you're not doing me a favor. I just want to make sure I'm not
It
being
wasn't
cheating.
clear that that was your sunshine violation, but
I-
you've clarified that, so go ahead and start his 4 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Doherty, this is what you're walking into. Out of thousands of counties, districts, we're number 6 in feeling safe and secure. You're walking into a very high morally valued county. I'll provide this to you if you want to, but we are a wonderful county to be part of. It's crazy how good we are. Our school graduates more graduates than the United States average. We graduate that many. Crime rate doesn't even show up on the chart for hate crimes, racial crimes, any kind of powerful crimes. It doesn't even show. It should be red. You can't even see it because it's so minor. It doesn't show up on the chart. Well below the standards. Unfortunately, some of the things come with that. You know, we don't value money obviously more than others because we have low income. We're all willing to settle for our income to live here and do the things we do here, which is safe and feel safe, and it's a great county to live in. We may pay for it in the fact that we are a low-income county, well below the national standards, okay? Jobless unemployment is higher than the national average, you know, so be it. We're all happy, you're feeling safe, you have great moral values. One of the biggest odd things is that once we graduate those kids, we plummet. For college, they don't go to college. We're well below the national average in 2 years, 4 years. Master degrees or anything like that doesn't even show up. So we're not preparing our kids for college. We're getting them out, and I appreciate that. And if this money is going to come to us untainted, like it sounds like it is, if we're not putting kids in college, let's get them ready for a job. Let's do an incubator. We're still an agricultural county. You can do an incubator, a business incubator, where kids literally build a widget and shop, teach the other kids how to market it, teach the other kids how to logistically move it, teach the other kids how to advertise it. However, they all work in this succession, and everybody's learning a job, so when they don't go to college for some reason, because we're not preparing them for college the right way, but we can work on that. That's probably what we should have been talking about the last year and a half instead of fighting or doing things like this. So you are walking in to an absolute gem, and considering your opening statement, it could be a perfect match. Considering what you've done, you might want to change your boots if the boys get you out back in some kind of business model or something like that, but you are walking into a gem, and our board is getting smarter. We're all getting smarter. We're active because of the pandemic, and we will all wind up knowing how to read grants better, how to participate better, how to encourage who has really been, like this ESSER grant is supposed to be who was the most disenfranchised. Well, it's going to be the arts and the arts programs, right? They couldn't be here in person doing their business. You got the tech kids who couldn't weld, couldn't build. You're going to have the special need kids. So if you have to prioritize, by God, take those three, put them in A, B, and C, and then every kid underneath that suffered, and then distill it the right way, send it down the right way. Get 2 welders instead of 1 welder, so 10 kids don't got to wait for 1 welder. My kid was, I try not to use my kids ever inside these meetings so people don't think it's personal. It's always been personal, but I'm trying to do it as a citizen, not as a dad, because if I start talking about what my kids have suffered with, then I can lose focus, and people can discredit me even better, saying, oh, look, it's just about him. It's not. Because these kids will all come home to roost in this county. So it'd be best if we bring back some either graduates or some kids who can run some businesses for us. Thank you, Mr. Doherty, for the opening statement. I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Any other? Yes.
My name is Christopher Reese. I live in Eaton Township.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I came here tonight with a heavy heart because I thought that we were going to spend a lot of money and time on SEL. I prepared a statement, and now it's been completely nullified. I'll read what I had originally said. Concerning the TASD ESSER 3 grant approval, my advice is to vote this grant down because it surreptitiously authorizes the surveillance and documentation of our children through the SEL program. Social emotional learning is nothing more than critical race theory repackaged under another name. I've read the ARP ESSER plan thoroughly, and I know what it says and I know what it doesn't say. It espouses noble and uncontroversial goals. However, it is a contract which legally implements programs and procedures which are not germane to the core curriculum taught in this district. And those programs and procedures are rife with opportunity to brainwash and control our children psychologically and emotionally. This information may be surprising to this audience, but I can assure you of its veracity. And I go on to basically say that the plan's goal was to oblige and eventually obligate taxpayers of the district to continue to support programs implemented by the fund by this one-time grant in perpetuity simply by the perception of need. In time, public education will be transformed into a social engineering project that promotes and develops unhealthy relationships among children and teachers, which can come between parents and their children. I also fear that the administration of the TASD will become an unwitting data collecting agency for the state while controlling the hearts and minds of our children. Please do not let that happen for your sake. And so, with a light heart, I say thank you so much for that opening statement. I thought we were headed down a dark path, but I have great faith now that the school is heading in the right direction. So thank you very much. I'd like to, I don't know, just say welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You can see why we wanted him to be able to talk about that before we had public comment, so that people knew what what direction we were going in. Mr. Walsh, no, thank you. You're not a resident or a taxpayer of the district, but thank you.
Is it okay because I'm representing
No.
the Citizens Advisory Group?
You have to register that interest in advance of the meeting.
I sent an email to Carolyn before the meeting.
We didn't receive anything, and it also, the directive is to address it to me. So, I'm sorry, but no.
Okay.
Mr. Doherty, our school board should be the ones making this decision, but
Are you
I'm making a
objecting?
sunshine law violation, and I encourage the board to take a recess to reconsider what they're doing. If you were to read 903, if someone was to call a point of order and read 903, the existing
Are you
policy,
making a violation to a part of the Sunshine Act?
this is a sunshine law violation.
What
We
part
have,
of the Sunshine Act are you objecting to?
he's speaking. He's here to speak on.
What part of the Sunshine Act are you objecting to?
This is going to be for public participation. This is going to be for 706. This will also be for the right for public participation. 710. He is with us. Our policy.
The Sunshine Act does not allow
710
that.
public
It does not require
participation.
it.
710
Your
public.
objection is observed, but it is denied.
So-
Thank you, Mr. Uhas.
I'm just going to let you guys know that I was given direct orders to give you the sunshine law violation. Your policy.
Okay, so, we are moving along. You have item number 5, enrollments, is there for your information. Item number 6, the approval of minutes. We do have to make a correction to the minutes on board booklet page 13. It's also page 6 of the minutes. The actual resolution, like where it gives the narrative of that, is correct, but in the tally sheet on the table, the votes are reversed. So those that are marked for yes were actually voted no, and those that were voted no were actually yes. So with that correction, can we get a motion?
Motion to approve with the correction.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett? Mrs. Eckerd? Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 7, business and finance. Looking for a motion for items 1 through 6.
So moved.
Holly, can you do number 6 separately?
Okay, can we get a motion for items 1 through 5?
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
No.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. All right, looking for a motion on number 6 under business and finance.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Abstain.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. All right, our superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'm looking for a motion to approve items 1 through 4.
Motion approved for the superintendent.
You abstain on the business and finance is where you abstain.
That was
Do
one,
we have a second for that?
I'll second.
it was 1 through 4, correct?
1 through
Yes.
4.
1 through 4.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I want to, well, there's 2 resignations on here that have already passed. One was Mr. DeLuca, who was our interim superintendent, so thank you for his time here. But also under there, we have Jeffrey Howell. It says high school custodian, but anybody who knows what Jeff did around here, it was a whole lot more than that. There wasn't a co-curricular, extracurricular activity that was out there that he felt he could do that he didn't do. From the band to the lighting to volleyball coach. I'm guessing there's probably other things that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. So he's moved on to bigger and better things for him and his family, but thank you for all the dedication. I'm sure you'll still see him in the halls because he's not going to be able to stay away. So that being said, any other discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. I think I'm the only one that has to abstain from the next, so you could probably put the 2 together because I have to abstain from both.
I'll read 5 and 6 individually. 5 is recommend. I recommend that a resolution be adopted approving extracurricular appointments for the 21-22 school year as listed. Salaries would be prorated as necessary if the district's ability to complete the year was affected for any reason, and clearances on file as indicated.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Abstain.
Next, number 6, I recommend a resolution be adopted approving volunteers as presented for the 21-22 school year, and clearances are on file as indicated.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Abstain.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Oh, sorry, abstain. Abstain.
I'll accept, or I'd like to accept a motion putting items 7 and 8 together.
Number 7.
7 and 8.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Who was the second?
Burke and Widener win at the same time.
Okay.
All right. Roll call, please.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Okay, anything else you want to cover under Superintendent?
No?
Okay. Committee reports. We have had some negotiations with the teachers union and some negotiations committee meetings. I don't believe there's been other committee meetings, right? Okay. Any other committee business?
I'm going to make a recommendation per a criminal suit brought by Mr. Uhas versus the policy committee meeting that we redo the January meeting. He voiced his opinion that if we put a motion forward to redo the meeting, that the criminal suit will be dropped. So I'm asking the committee chair, which is you, and Bill, to redo the meeting.
Okay, well, the way that the policy committee or any committee meeting can be called is if the committee chair calls a meeting or two members of the committee request a meeting. So I'm not calling another one. Dr. Pabola, would you like to request another?
No.
Okay. But thank you very much, Mr. Franco. Any other committee business? Okay, what's the section?
If you don't mind, don't interrupt me too, please. So the Sunshine Law violation that he's referring to has criminal charges attached to it, and I was willing to withdraw.
What's the section, subsection?
Please, Holly, I'm going to tell you, please. So we already know what they are. I made it very clear, I sent you copies of the email, that the meeting was not noticed properly. So it's going to be noticed. The violation is going to be the notice. There was no agendas. There was no material available for the attendees. It's a slam dunk, easy one. He made a motion simply to say redo the meeting. So when you are not found successful that you didn't properly notice it, which clearly you did, when you find out you didn't have agendas and pertinent information for everybody to have a fair and lawful meeting, so simply by him making a motion to redo it, like you did last time, and maybe a second from somebody, then you did it last time, do it again. That alone is going to withdraw the criminal charges for that, instead of just saying, sue me, get an attorney, sue me.
We hear your objection. Your objection is stated.
It's a practical thing.
We are denying your objection on the advice of legal counsel. Thank you very much.
So the legal counsel.
Okay. So, moving along to unfinished business. We have item number 1, which is recommend that a resolution be adopted approving the second reading of the policies listed. Board Policy 006 for meetings, Board Policy 006.1 for attendance at meetings via electronic communications, and Board Policy numbers 903, public participation in board meetings. Looking for a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett?
No.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco? Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Pabola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. So those policies are now effective going forward. All right, under new business, we have the TASD Visa account for your information only. We also have item number 2, the summary of Kelly Services substitute teacher fill rate for information only. And moving along to item number 3, recommend that a resolution be adopted approving an overnight field trip for the CTE grades 9 to 12 students to Hershey, PA for the FBLA State Leadership Conference.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Who,
Is your mic on?
oh, maybe, yeah.
Just lean in a little. There you go.
This was put in by Mr. Keown, but how many, is it just going to be him and Barb Sick attending as chaperones, or is there going to be more? It'll be just the two? Okay, okay.
I think if you need, we can address that. I mean, someone
Correct, yeah, I understand that, and I was just wondering if it was only gonna be the two, or would there be more? Okay. Okay. Okay.
So to
Thanks.
summarize, the answer was that there are two, and it is a male and a female because there are male and female students
Correct.
attending. Any other questions or comments? All right, can we get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco? Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item number 4, recommend that a resolution be adopted approving the bus and van contracts for January and February as presented. Can we get a motion and a second?
Motion approved.
Second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Franco? Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Abstain.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. For the next item, the discussion of conversion to natural gas, we'll ask Mr. Spolsky, our Director of Buildings and Grounds Facilities, to come up and give us some information on this.
Holly, can I talk about 5 and 6 together?
Yes, please.
Okay, because they both obviously...
So number 6 is the discussion and motion, or possible motion, on the 2022-2023 fuel oil bid.
Correct. So moving forward for the 2022-2023 fuel bid, my recommendation would be that we purchase at the same quantity that we did for this school year. And I am basing that on moving forward with the conversion, using the remainder of this year and the summer to get infrastructure from UGI set on a timetable, and then possibly doing partial conversion. We would start with the middle school, which is a smaller scope project, and then follow with the conversion at the admin, which is a much bigger scope. I think there were some concerns about kind of being left with this big chunk of oil that, we're kind of stuck buying if we go through this. So we kind of worked through some of the different scenarios. I was able to get in touch with a few of our vendors, and it is possible to, especially with the middle school, we can convert one boiler at a time, and then use up the rest of that oil. So there is no restraint on us. We can leave the tank in the ground, use the rest of the oil, and move forward with the conversion. If worst case scenario, we wanted to do full conversion over to gas, we can move that oil if there was any remaining in those tanks at a minimal cost. So I think the cost savings by going with the 52.5 would be significant, as opposed to putting it out for public bid. Locally, I think we'll probably spend a lot more. So, and that would include if we did have to move some fuel at the end. So if there's any questions on that part of it, I'll try to answer, anything that you guys might have in mind.
So John, so it looks like that was 52,500, right?
Correct. It's 7 loads, basically.
Okay. Yeah, and our usage obviously has been significantly above that.
Yeah, so we average yearly anywhere between 80 and 90. This year, the mean temperature was pretty cool outside, so we're probably going to be upwards in that higher 80s. Also take into consideration, we're bringing a lot more fresh air into the buildings with COVID. So we definitely don't want to give that up, so we're actually running at a little less efficiency. But air quality is obviously more important.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Spolsky?
Well, also, at the end of the school year, we need oil. We can always split a load between two buildings
We can.
so we don't overload any one tank.
Yeah, so there's just to, kind of build on that, it's a minimal charge for a split order. So in other words, we've got to purchase a 7,500 gallon load, but we can split that load, and it's a $75 charge for us to put it in any building we want. So we can put 3,000 in middle school and, 4,500 or break it up however we want.
And if by some chance we converted both these buildings over in town right away, which that's not the plan right now, we can still use that fuel at the Mahopany building?
Correct. Yeah, so that would be our fallback.
Any other questions or board comment or discussion? Thanks, John.
Okay.
All right, so with that, we had the discussion about the conversion to natural gas, looking for a motion for a specific fuel oil bid.
A motion to approve the amount that John said, the same as last year, if I heard him right.
52,500 gallons?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
So if I hear correctly, we want to lock in the 52,500 gallons?
Yes. With the idea that if by some chance we transferred everything over to natural gas and we had leftover, that it can be used at the Mahopany building.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Pavola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco? Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item number 7, recommend that a resolution be adopted approving the 2022-2023 LIU general operating budget.
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second? Any board discussion?
Holly, I would just like to say that the cost difference in expenditures for the district is from last year to next year is just a little over $4,000 less than any previous year.
Wow. Yeah, 4,172. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Pavola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco? Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item number 8 is pulled from the agenda. Item number 9, recommend that a resolution be adopted approving an agreement between the University of Scranton and TASD defining the rules and responsibilities of the university and TASD in the planning and implementation of a field experience for university students. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second. And we have a second? Do we have any discussion?
I had a question.
Yes.
For Paul, actually. So Paul, when I read through this, it all made sense to me, but like, did everything that was lined out there make sense to you with the responsibilities of what the university owns versus what we own? Like, it all made sense?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this multiple times. This is a
I
pretty
figured,
standard.
yeah.
This
I've
is a
seen
pretty
it once in
standard
my life,
document.
and it was yet lit when I was reading it, so I just wanted to make
Yes.
sure.
No, this is essentially the agreement that we could take observers, student observers, and
Yep.
potentially student teachers
Yep.
from the University of Scranton, and it's just their standard agreement.
Okay, I just wanted to check with you.
Any other discussion or questions? Okay, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco? Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Pavola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item number 10. recommend a resolution be adopted approving the application and certification for payment for $26,231.40 for LK surface mount bottle filling stations, which includes a filter kit.
Motion to approve, and what I've seen, they look like a nice addition to the district.
Yeah. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? So I figured, I was actually really pleased to see this on the agenda because the kids came home a week or two ago and they said, hey, we're not having bottled water at school anymore. But we also, not thrilled about the idea of moving back to like archaic water fountains that have their own, plethora of issues. So I had planned to, write an email or ask somebody about like, couldn't we get some of these? Like we have them at our office. And then I know we already had one or two somewhere, right, in the district? We have two in the district already. They've been there since before COVID, right? 2018. So now we'll have some more of these, and that's pretty exciting. Kids can bring in their own water bottles, or I'm sure we could scrounge up a cup for a kid that wants to get a drink and doesn't have a water bottle on them. So, any other comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco? Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Pravola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Last item, discussion, information on right-to-know requests received and possible motion on the hiring of an administrative assistant to assist with right-to-know requests. Mr. Doherty.
Sure, thank you again for the opportunity.
You might want to pull that closer.
Thank you again for the opportunity to address the board and the public. Since, obviously, we work on a fiscal year, so I went back and saw since the start of our fiscal year last July 1st, there have been 90 right-to-know requests that have been submitted to our school district. Since February 1st of this year, there has been 41 requests. In the last 7 days, there has been 8 requests. We do get a lot of these vetted through Sweet Stevens, the law firm that we use. We have not been billed for the right-to-know reviews since December 31st, but in the first half of the fiscal year, it cost just shy of $29,000 for review of that. Right now, we have, out of the 90 requests, we have fulfilled 43 of them. We have denied 18 of them. 10 of those have been appealed. 8 of those appealed ones have been dismissed and 2 are still pending. There are 23 that are currently on an extension with the 30-day extension, and there are 6 that are new within 5 days. So we're currently still working on 29 active right-to-knows, compiling that information. Mary Jean, Mrs. Egan, is our right-to-know officer. Carolyn is very involved. Mrs. Lawson is very involved in helping gather that information. On average, it's taking approximately 2 to 3 hours per request. Some are obviously more extensive than others. Some are, much more than that, and some are shorter than that. But on average, I would say we're about 2 to 3 hours per request in our office. And I think we should consider the possibility of bringing on an additional administrative assistant to assist with these tasks. From my understanding, there used to be an additional administrative assistant in the office where Mrs. Lawson is, and I would ask that the board consider bringing that position back to assist with the amount of work currently being done.
So-
$29,000.
Paul,
Go ahead.
I have a question on the right to knows. You said there have been appeals, and that's when our attorney gets involved and has to write up a big legal answer. Isn't that correct?
I'm gonna ask Mrs. Egan actually to answer that if she's comfortable.
Jason has to answer them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the answer, Bill, to your question is yes, that's correct.
And thus far, out of the appeals, how many have we blocked?
None, 0. There's been 10 that have been appealed, 8 were dismissed, and 2 are still pending in the Office of Open Records.
Okay.
I just ran some quick math just on the ones received in February. If there were, sorry, how many did we say were received in February? I used it
Since
wrong.
February 1st, we've received 41, and 29 of, we still have 29 outstanding.
Okay, so assuming 2.5 hours on average, divided by 8 hours in a workday, we could have had somebody working full-time in district 12.8 hours in the month of February so far, just doing right-to-know records polls. Huh? Days. Yeah. 12.8 days, 12.8 8-hour workdays on right-to-knows. So I believe we need to list this position and relieve our staff that we already are paying to do other jobs that are doing this at least part-time, if not somebody doing it next to full-time, depending on the day. I don't believe that we need a board vote for this, but I'd like to hear.
Well, no,
Is there anyone opposed?
I wanted the board just to be aware that,
Right.
and I'm not, certainly I'm not asking for an administrator, I'm asking for an additional administrative assistant in that office, but the board vote would come into play when I bring potentially a candidate back for approval. But you're never going to meet anybody as transparent as me. I want to talk about this on the floor and let you know exactly why I'm doing it and my rationale behind it. And I certainly wouldn't want you to be surprised if you saw a job posting. I would want you to know why.
I think I'd like to see at all future public board meetings an update to the progress of this. Like, what are our outstanding, what's been determined, how many have been appealed, as we get more bills in from the legal counsel on these things. I just think that we need to have a full picture of what this situation is.
Whatever the board requests, I mean, we could provide that.
Anybody have an opposition to that?
No. So the question is, just like we added that, the dashboard on the website, can we add a dashboard for the right to know so we know, here's the running list of what's out there, what the content is, and so we know which ones are closed or not closed?
Yes, and our district solicitor has said that is perfectly fine to do.
Okay. I mean, it's pretty important. We're talking about adding a $70,000 position to manage something, and so that comes on the back of taxpayers. So I'd want to know where we are. Is it getting better? Is it escalating? Because we just need somebody to be able to handle that work. And we need to keep our current folks focused on educational quality of kids and not handling this. So if it requires a full-time position, we're going to need to staff it. But I think, as Paul said, we want to be transparent as to what's going on and why, because it's a significant cost. And then what would that person do if the work changes? I mean, it's a pretty complex thing. I mean, really, it's somebody with paralegal skills. It's not even an administrative position. Like, if there's truly going to be this level of inquiry, we need to think about, do we staff somebody with those skills instead of paying a Sweet Stevens?
Yeah, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking at another Act 93 type position that's similar to Carolyn, right? I mean, this is not just a support staff.
That's correct.
Because of the delicate nature of what has to be dealt with. It has to be,
That would be my recommendation, yes.
Okay. Any other board input, questions, clarifications? Anybody have an opposition to any of this?
Well, that's the cost of a teacher. Like, that's unfortunate. Oh, I said that's the cost of a teacher, so, it'd be an unfortunate use of money. So I think we need to think about, I think there has to be, the dashboard, I think is a good idea, because then we can figure out when the right break-even point is to do the staffing correctly.
I mean, and certainly, I'm not really looking for the board to take any action tonight.
Yeah.
I thought it was worthy of a discussion
Yep.
on the floor. because it is something just in, I've been here a week, and I see that how much it's taking the time of two people that do a lot of work within our district. So I just thought it was worthy of putting on the floor, and we could decide to take no action on this, or we could decide that, yeah, we could, see what candidates are available, or we could talk about this again next month.
Well, it sounds like there's alignment on getting the data posted, and then we can see what that looks like. You see what candidates are available, what the recommendation would be, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
I think that sounds fine.
The problem is taking away time for our current staff to be doing the work that they should be doing.
Yeah. Laura?
Could we also look at like a specific job description for what this position would be? Not obviously just not right to know,
Absolutely.
but what would be detailed?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Absolutely. I stopped short of starting to develop that. I mean, pending the outcome of this, the feel of this discussion.
Yeah, I'm usually one of the last ones that want to hire new people, but with what's going on and stuff and the time it's taking away from the education process, I think we really need to look into this and move forward on it.
Also, I'm sorry, could you look at, I don't know how to do this, but can we see what the other school districts similar to us have done? So does Wyalusing have this? Does Elk Lake, the ones we benchmark against? Can we see, do they have a similar request issued? And do they have they staffed it, or how have they staffed it?
Sure.
Anybody else? Okay, well, keep us up to date. Let us know when that dashboard is ready to go. Do we have any other additional board comments before public comment?
I do, Holly. I just want to make note of the passing of two former employees here, Mr. Frank Mazzio, who was an assistant principal here in the high school, and Mr. Frank Wattis, who was a teacher that I had for 2 years, and also when I was here as a fellow employee. And I also want to thank everybody in the district who has sent me cards on the passing of my sister at the end of January. Thank you.
Very sorry for your loss, Bill. All right, public comment, open to residents, taxpayers, students, or staff of the Tunkhannock Area School District, and limited to 4 minutes. Mrs. Egan will time. Who would, come right on up. And just a reminder, state your name and your municipality, please, for us.
My name is Gary Tewksbury. I am from the Washington Township area. I was a former school board member here back in the 90s for about 6 years. So tonight is just a thank you. Because I know where you're at, what you're doing. I have feelings of what you've gone through. And I'll be truthful, I have not attended a school board meeting since my last meeting as a school board member. And for some really good reasons. You get burned out, even at 6 years. But I do appreciate what you all do. And we had challenges back then too, but in the last 2 years, your challenges has been tremendous, trying to go through with education, trying to fight and figure out what to do with COVID. We've had, back in the 90s, we had this big building program. We had educational programs we were pushing, and then we had teacher negotiations, which I learned a lot. And I was on that committee, so we had, in 10 months, I spent $600 in those 10 months negotiating with teachers. So believe me, that was a real eye-opening. So this board has challenging jobs, but someone has to do it. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart, from an old school board director, for what you're doing. And you're doing it for the community service, for the school system and for public education. You're doing right things right, and I just wanted to make sure you heard that. You will always have challenges. You will always have challengers out there to keep you on your toes, but hang in there because you're doing right things right. So I fully support what you've been doing. I am pleased in the short time that I've heard your new superintendent and where he's coming from. I think you picked the right man. So thank you again for your dedication. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tewksbury. Was that you saying that you're going to run again?
When I was on the school board, I was assigned for 2 years, and then I ran for 4 years. And during that building program, we had a community attention committee that were really on us. So at most nights, we'd have 100 to 200 people here. 5 out of 6 of us got voted out that night, or that next election, and it was right after the teachers, we agreed on it. To my surprise, and they were against the building program. We were building a new middle school, new Mahopany School. We had athletic fields that we thought we needed. After we got voted out, and I said, okay, that's enough. But they not only took a hold of the building programs and went ahead, the new members, which most of them were members of that community challenge group we had, they added on renovations of the football field, a new soccer field, a new baseball field, and a new softball field. So, no, I will not run again. But
Thank you for your service to our community, too. All right. Any other public comment?
I'm Jennifer Brody. I live in Northmoreland Township. Welcome to our district. Appreciate your openness. I hope that continues because that'll be really great. But the first thing that I want to bring up is I know in a previous school board meeting I brought up about vaping at the schools. It's still a significant issue. My children and their friends on a regular basis have thanked me for bringing it up to your attention, and they've also said that there really hasn't been any improvement at all. So I'm just wondering, has there been any action taken towards improving that, or is that just a standard that they're going to have to learn to live with?
I don't have an answer for you right this second. I mean, I'll definitely investigate it.
So the issue is my children and a bunch of other children can't go into the bathroom and use it comfortably because there's so many kids vaping in the bathroom. They have since had or heard like conversations with teachers where teachers are frustrated, feeling that even if they do go and say something to the kids, that they're not going to be backed, like nothing, there are going to be no consequences for those kids. So they could go and say, hey, get out of here, but that's it. Like there's nothing that's going to be done as far as follow-up. But I'm really lucky to have very smart kids. They actually came up with several different solutions. So there's actually a thing, I guess, that's out there that are vaping sensors. You can put them in the bathroom and they alarm.
There are vape detectors.
There's one problem. Another solution that was brought up is if you are going to just, or if it's just going to be allowed in our school, just make vaping centers that aren't in the bathroom. So if children want to go use the bathroom, they could just do that, and then the vaping could just be, you know, allowed somewhere else.
I would never allow that.
I would hope that you wouldn't allow that, but honestly, if it comes to my kids being able to use the bathroom, I'd prefer that instead of not feeling comfortable just using the bathroom at their schools. They also came up with ideas of, I guess in other areas, they put fines out there. They confiscate vaping, like it's expensive, like they do things like that to take care of it. So if you need more ideas, my kids are smart, I'll ask them. They could come up with solutions, but it hasn't gotten any better, and I'm kind of disappointed to be up here talking about that again, because I think there's more important things to address.
You can't, you're not on.
Excuse me 1 second. I think Mr. Bosher, did you want to say something?
Well, I just want to assure Mrs. Brody and the board that 2 points. One is we are working with John Shapolsky and Joe Cormus to take some deliberate steps that just haven't been revealed yet to address your concerns. And vaping in the high school, and I can also assure you that if students that do get caught vaping are referred to the magistrate, they receive a fine, they get court costs, they also, under our wellness policy, have to attend a session of what was called the tobacco cessation clinic, but now it's a cessation clinic. So there are steps in place. I will absolutely admit to you, and as with any administrator in the country, vaping is rampant in schools. It is, and it's the same all over the country, but I can assure you that we're taking some very deliberate steps.
Well, I think you guys are all very bright, and I think that, we could be better than the very bad schools out there. So thank you for that. Another thing that I like to bring up as a concern is initially we had the American Rescue Plan, and as part of that, our school received funds for that. Since then, and that was actually intended to cover things like face masks, hand sanitizer, upgrades, ventilation, that type of stuff. Since then, 2 other grants have come out for the ESSER, and it actually stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. The concern is that there's a lot of information that's being circulated that you can go look up online. My concern is, to me, it seems like there's an agenda out there to use these funds not for emergency relief, because it doesn't really feel like we're still in emergency. So it seems like right now they're trying to implement mental health centers in schools and go with social emotional learning, things like critical race theory. So I just ask that you guys really pay attention to those things, understand when we talk stakeholders, it's not just us as citizens, we want to be involved, but it's also other organizations that are promoting agendas that we don't want in our conservative areas. So I just ask that you really pay attention to that, because it's really important to, I think, a lot of us in the community, and that we look at that. So we know that, we had a problem with things coming into our curriculum that was critical race theory, and we were told by school board members that, hey, we're not accepting critical race theory, and then we find out that it's actually been part of the curriculum for several years, because teachers are just kind of going rogue and bringing that in. I can tell you now that things with Battle of the Books, my daughter's read 3 books so far of 7, and they're all about critical race theory or racism. I would like my daughter to have something else other than just that, and my other daughter as well, and I think a lot of the people in the community would. So if we're having a hard time getting those things under control, and agenda sneaking in with that, I think it's really scary looking at an ESSER grant where we have to actually report things outside of our community to governments that may not be aligned with what our values are. So I just ask that those things be really taken into consideration going forward.
Thanks,
Thank
Jen.
you.
And to be clear, the reason I said that she'd go past is because other people had talked, to answer questions at that time. So I thank you.
Okay, Mr. Doherty, I gave you the good things about our county, how we're delivering you literally high-valued, morally valued kids, teachable, clearly teachable, because you're graduating at a higher rate than the United States. So that's important. Getting them into college is going to be a big deal. If we can't get them to college right away, it's too much of a change for that kind of dynamic, then please prepare them for some other type of things, like maybe a business model that creates a business incubator for kids to become creative and entrepreneurial or something, because they're all going to wind up in the workforce if they're not getting off to college. So please help with that. So the culture of the school district, faculty, what Mrs. Brody just kind of touched on is, it's still happening now. We know how to investigate it now using outside entities. I'd prefer our board start doing it, going in and checking on them, because I know if I sat on that board, I'd be checking on these teachers a little harder. Myself, I'd be looking into it instead of making citizens have to do it, because then it gets all brutal and fighting instead of concentrating. Because really, when's the last time we talked about education? We keep worrying about spending money and fighting on things. When's the last time? You have teachers, everything I'm about to say, I have digital proof of it. I have signed affidavits of everything. You have teachers still today blowing off what we asked. A specific book, yeah, let's talk about it, and then we argue about the efficacy of it. It's just not part of our curriculum. So don't put it in our curriculum. If the board didn't approve it, don't put it in there. There's teachers still doing it. You have teachers, everything I'm saying is captured. They will literally say things like, yeah, you and your free dumbs, D-U-M-B. You have teachers with their political views being posted, paraphernalia being posted, being asked to be taken down, having to be told to, poor Mr. Bosher takes it. If I was to have an arbiter and everything that Mr. Bosher tried to take responsibility for, if I stood in front of him and gave a list of everything that supposedly he did because he wants to take responsibility for it, they'd freaking fire him. I don't want him fired. I need him because he does a good job. But he has to keep owning every mistake that gets made by every stinking faculty member that goes outside and is rogue in some way, and then he has to do the company man thing and own it. And if you wanted to fire Mr. Bosch, you'd get him fired in the blink of an eye, list on everything that he admits that it's on him. He tells me, look no further than him. I appreciate that, Mr. Bosher, but I need you because you know I like you. So you do what you do best, but him having to keep friggin' owning for everything. Mrs. Egan is not the premier person to be the person in charge of right to knows. For 4 years, she allowed things to happen. The culture she helped create, and now right to knows is gonna go through her. I mean, one of the biggest, most expensive right to knows was people wanting to read books. You have an application to read a book. If I wanted to loan a book out, I got it. One of the biggest fights that they put up was not letting parents, every night, every book in this district goes home for review. By rule, it just generally goes home for a parent to look at it. But when an organization wants to look at it, potentially dig deeper, they put up a fight from hell and spent all district's money. They're going to sit up there and say, yeah, I dare you to put up that dashboard. Put the dashboard up so people can see the content and see what you're fighting over versus just giving us the answers. So you have another teacher saying, if teaching it to them doesn't hurt them, you're not teaching it right. If teaching it to them doesn't hurt, you're not teaching it right. So yeah, our kids are going to need social emotional learning from the very teachers that are indoctrinating them. And you have another one saying, we just need to indoctrinate them better. So you have another member of the district deliberately saying, teaching other people how to avoid open public records so they can't get captured.
Wrap it up, Mr. Uhas.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. So we're giving you great kids from a high value, very safe and secure number 6 on the list. We're giving them to you. Please keep them safe, board. We expect you to keep them safe. New administration, please help us keep them safe. We know you're a liaison trying to bring stuff from other departments to us. If you cut some of that down, it gives them less work because they don't always come as studied as you are. So, and then we're going to be studied. We're going to help them do their work. But I ask you, please, we're giving you great kids, you're graduating them, we're making them teachable, but we need more from them. We need them graduating college and or getting into businesses. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Uhas. Any other public comment?
Sheila Donnelly, I live in the township, Tunkhannock Township. I want to follow up again. I had a FOIA request. Wasn't happy with the results I got. This was about, I'll bring everybody up to speed, especially because we have new superintendent. This is about the All-American Boys book again. This is not an opinion. This is a policy violation that this book has been recirculated into our school for 4 years. It's fallen through the cracks. Our school board needs to know about this, that somehow a teacher gets a hold of this book for 4 years in a row, does not have any sanctions against her. Okay, I found out through the FOIA request. We were told at a school board meeting that there was going to be some kind of sanction against this. No, that didn't happen. As far as I could see from the FOIA request answer, a person was fired. I don't know who it was. That's fine, I don't need to know. That was redacted. Thank you for redacting it. I don't need to know who that was. It's not that teacher because the teacher still works here. We know who the teacher is who had that book. It's in the school board notes. It's in the universe. We know who that is. So the thing that I'm concerned about is that book represents something. It represents profanity and vulgarity that we don't want in this district. This is a conservative place. How many more books are you guys gonna let go through this school district and have a child, a student, find it and bring it home to their parents, and accidentally it comes out? How many more books are floating around like that? We don't know, because you guys don't want to find out. That's the message I'm getting. And this has been going on for weeks and months now. And so that's why I'm upset. I'm trying to be tactful about this, but I'm done. Done being tactful about it. Thank you for the communication that I'm getting, that the book was put in the library, but that is not a plan of correction. That book was not a curriculum book. It was supplemental curriculum. It never went through the curriculum committee. It just somehow magically ended up in a classroom. And I gave you guys a copy of what it looked like. I can tell you what it's violating. It's on page 21 of the handbook under Level 2 Examples, Profanity. Page 13, speech that is inappropriate in an educational setting or violates district rules necessary to maintain quality education environment. Inappropriate language including obscene, profane, lewd, vulgar, rude, disrespectful, threatening. Not threatening, sorry, I'll take that out. Please pass these. You guys can get the handbook just as easy as anyone else's online. This is an emotional topic for me because I don't want to see our community have these kinds of books being taught in our school. I've got a grandson that's going to start kindergarten. It's very concerning to me. Please fix this, please. Please make sure that you do something with this policy so it doesn't fall through the cracks. My second thing is, this is a different topic altogether. I'm finding out now that a lot of the schools, and this is done per school, are doing test to stay. We were told that's not going to happen in our school. I hope that that is still the case. My questions are, if that ends up happening, will parents be notified if their child is tested for COVID or any other kind of germ?
So I'm going to have to just, we're out over the floor, but I will say that there's been no discussion on this board to bring in any kind of test to stay. And I feel comfortable enough giving my guarantee that it would be a board approved by a vote, regardless of whether it needs it legally or not. This board would vote publicly on whether or not to bring any kind of COVID testing type program in. I can't speak to drug testing programs or anything like that, but I
could speak to test to stay. I mean, just because I've done a lot of reading on it. Even districts that have it, parents have to opt their children into it.
That's the rumor, though, that they signed something that gives schools sort of carte blanche. Once their child walks onto the property, they can do certain things without giving them their express consent to do the test that very day. So that's what we're worried about.
Yeah, there's been zero discussion with me about test to stay, and I'm gonna be honest. I'm not a huge fan of it because it also puts a ton of reporting onto current school nursing staff.
Have you seen the list of all the schools that are onboarding?
Yes.
They're all around us.
I know a lot of them. I mean, I've
really,
this county.
I think that stops being a viable program for our district when we decided to not make kids who were just close contacts stay home. Because the test to stay, my understanding, means that rather than a kid who is not vaccinated having to stay home for 5, 10, 15, however many days they decide it is that week,
that's correct.
It would allow them to stay in school. We already, a month or more ago, made it so that kids who are not symptomatic can stay in school regardless of their vaccination status. So it wouldn't even have a value here for that. But I don't think there's anybody in this board who would argue with the fact that we would have a public vote before any, like, we know that that's a volatile thing. We don't want it, well, I won't speak for everybody. I don't want it myself. I don't think anybody else does either, and it would be a moot point for Tunkhannock. Our goal is, let's get back to normal school and have as few times as possible have COVID be listed in any kind of thing that we are having to address. Personal opinion.
Okay, I just wanted to have that sort of repeated. I'm glad to hear that
Thank you.
again. It's out there. It
Yeah.
really is. So, okay, thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.
Other public comment? All right, any other board comment? Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Great, I'm Ann DeMarco. I'm a parent in the district. I'm also an employee. And I want to thank you all for your continued service. I want to echo Mr. Tewksbury's remarks. I know it's been a hard couple years for all of us. I want to speak as a parent who really appreciates all that my children read in this district. I have a son who graduated as valedictorian. He's a junior at the University of Notre Dame. He spent a year in Brazil. He is choosing to do service in his roles. I have a daughter who's a sophomore Navy ROTC nursing student at Penn State. And they came through this school. They're great kids. They were challenged by every book they read, every conversation we had at our dinner table, by every teacher they had in this district because of the choices their educators made. I will continue to trust their teachers and the choices they make, and I thank you for trusting their teachers with those decisions. I want my children to be better than me. I want them to read more challenging texts. I want them to talk about those texts with their teachers, with their classmates. I want them to challenge each other. I want them to share their different points of view about it. This should be a safe place to have those conversations. The vulgar language is going on out there. The profanity is out there. It's in their hallways. It's between their seats. It's in their bathrooms. It's in my 7th grade daughter's classroom. It's not in the novels they read. These conversations have to be had with adults who can handle them, their teachers, because their parents aren't always having them. They're hard for me to have with my children. They're hard for us to have. So thank you for supporting the teachers, for making these important choices about the books that they're sharing with our children. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mrs. DeMarco. Any other final comments? Any other board comments? Do we have a motion to adjourn? One quick thing, that's me, I have to do this. We are going to be reevaluating our meeting schedule because we have a new superintendent and our meeting schedule may change. So we're probably going to be looking to have monthly meetings unless there's a reason we need to have twice a month meetings that an issue is just pressing. We don't yet know which of the particular meetings for March is going to be the one that we have, or if we end up having both. So we'll have it on the website, we'll have it in the newspaper, we'll have it on the door of the building, we'll have it, everywhere if and when there's a change to that. But I just wanted that to be on the radar for everybody. So thank you, everybody. Have a good night.